Hi everybody, it's Anne Marie at Cheese Slave, and I am making a video a little bit later today. I've been doing them in the morning usually, but maybe some people can catch this who are on later in the day. I am working on a post. I've been working all morning on a post about cod liver oil, and oh my gosh, I have learned so much over the past over the past few years. I've been researching this, several years, but I've really taken a deep dive into it, and this post is really long. It is, oh my gosh, it's getting hot out here. See, this is why I like to go early. I might sweat a little bit, but that's okay. You guys won't. You're not feeling it. You're just watching it, so it's okay. I am really kind of blown away at the difference in cod liver oil out there, and also blown away how a lot of us have not gotten good information on this, and there's still a lot of quote-unquote health experts out there recommending cod liver oil that really they shouldn't be recommending, and I'm going to get into it in this video. I'm going to put the post up hopefully by tonight. I'm going to work all afternoon. If not, it'll go up tomorrow, but I'm hoping to get it up today. Like I said, I did extensive research, passing by a construction site here, so it's a little bit noisy. I created a whole spreadsheet of all the different brands. I think I have like 10 different brands of cod liver oil, and I go into detail about each one, all the vitamins, the ratios of vitamins A and D, the omega-3 fatty acids, the extraction process, the manufacturing, just everything. Oh, get away from these construction people. So I want to talk first about, and then I want you guys to ask questions. If you have any questions or comments, please ask in this video, because I'm putting the final touches on the post today, and I'd love to include any of your input, because you guys always have such great input. The other day we were talking about baking with Teflon and cooking with Teflon, and somebody brought up the issue of waffle irons and the fact that you can't find a good waffle iron that's not Teflon, and that's something I've been thinking about. And because we talked about it, I got some feedback from, I think it's Bethany, and then we kind of talked back and forth on here, and I found a really good solution. So I'll put it in the links. If anybody wants to know what it is, ask me below, comment below, and I'll include that link to the waffle iron solution that I'm going to buy. All right. If you have questions about cod liver oil, if you have questions about anything about any of this, please ask below. Okay, or comments about what I'm saying. So, cod liver oil. There's 3 reasons you need to take cod liver oil. You don't need to take cod liver oil. I'm not saying you have to. Let me start by saying there's certain people who are have a greater need to take cod liver oil. Thank you. I'll post the waffle iron solution after this video is done. So there's a couple of groups of people who really need to take cod liver oil, and that is, those are people who are sick, and trying to recover, moms who are nursing or who are pregnant, really important for that group, and especially people who are on the autism spectrum. That it is just absolutely, totally critical for that group. There's a lot of research done, not a lot, but some. Dr. Mary Megson is a pediatrician who's worked with kids on the autistic spectrum, and they get their words back. It's definitely a connection with the vitamin A. And there's very, we're just not getting, I'm going to talk about this, but we're just not getting the amount of vitamin A that we used to and the vitamin D that we used to from our food, and I'm going to talk about why. Oh, I lost my connection. I'm back. I used to freak out whenever that happened, but now I'm like, yeah, it'll come back. So, all right, vitamin A and vitamin D for autistic spectrum, anybody on the spectrum. So, if people are perfectly healthy, they may not need to take, and they may be getting all their nutritional needs from food, although I'm going to talk about how hard it is. I'll talk about how hard it is to get everything from your food compared to the days of Dr. Weston Price when he went and traveled around the world. If you haven't read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Dr. Weston Price, highly recommend that book. He goes into great detail about I don't remember if it's 13 or 14 different groups around the world he studied, and they were in perfect health. They had no degenerative disease. They didn't have osteoporosis. They didn't have arthritis. They didn't have obesity. They're perfectly healthy. They didn't have to wear glasses. They didn't need braces. They had perfectly straight teeth. So he analyzed what it was they were eating and what was different about their diets. And what's interesting is all their diets were different, but they had certain things in common. And one of the things they all had in common is that they all had very high levels of fat-soluble activators, or vitamins. He calls them fat-soluble activators, including vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2. They ate 10 times more fat-soluble vitamins than the people in Dr. Price's day, which is in the 1930s. So these were people from Eskimos to people living in isolated areas, Scottish living out on the islands in Scotland, Swiss people living in the mountains. They didn't have access to modern industrial food, so they were eating their traditional diets. And like I said, they were all optimally healthy. None of them got cavities, very few cavities. But it was everyone from Indians to Eskimos to Peruvians, people in the South Sea Islands. So they got 10 times more fat-soluble vitamins, and they got 4 times more minerals in their diet. Now, I want to talk about why cod liver oil could be such a great supplement to your diet. You still want to try to eat well, but in this day and age, it is so hard, and I'm going to talk about why. So there's 3 reasons to take cod liver oil, and the first 2 are vitamins A and vitamin D, which most of us, like I said, are not getting enough of. I'll talk about why in detail. And then there's also, the 3rd reason is omega-3 fatty acids. So let's start with vitamin A and vitamin D. I kind of lump them together, and I do that on purpose because they really do work synergistically together. If you take too much vitamin A, it can be toxic if you don't take enough vitamin D. And so you need to, and all these traditional cultures, they did eat the right ratio. There's a reason why the Swiss people ate liver once a week. They didn't eat it every day. They also got a lot of vitamin A from butter and cream that they ate. But, the people ate these traditional diets and they thrived, and you can't just take supplements. That's the problem with taking supplements. Sometimes you'll take too much of one thing and not enough of another. So, in natural cod liver oil, there's a ratio of vitamins A and D, and you want to get the right ratio. There's so much to talk about on this issue. When you process food with modern day industrial processing, you destroy certain nutrients, you change. Oh, hi Coco, yes, I can see your comment. I'll talk for a while and then I'll answer any questions anybody has. So you're going to change the nutrient profile of food when you when you process it, that's why we want to go for foods that are the least processed as possible, like raw milk. And so I'm going to talk about raw milk and talk about the difference between raw milk from grass-fed cows and pasteurized milk eating grain. It's like night and day. And this is a great analogy to compare to cod liver oil, because most of the cod liver oil on the market is not worth buying. It's just not worth buying because it is so refined and denatured and reconstituted with synthetic vitamins that are not whole vitamins from nature. So it's a cheap substitute. Okay, vitamins A and D. So let me just talk about this first and talk about how hard it is to get enough vitamins A and D in your diet, and then I'll talk about omega-3s. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about raw milk and why it's so different and how hard it is to get really the differences between the different brands of milk, I'll just say, and then we'll compare that to cod liver oil. Okay, so vitamins A and D. Back in the day, like 150 years ago, like the 1800s, people used to eat a lot of lard. Pigs were kept by everyone. Everyone had pigs. Everyone had farms. The vast majority of people had farms. And they ate a lot of lard that came from the pigs. I recently bought a pig head. I've done this twice actually. And I roasted it in my oven and I got a ton of lard. Plus I got the bones for broth and I got a lot of meat for stews and things like that. It was really so cheap, actually. It was only, I think they sold it to me for like $10 or something. Pastured pig's head. So if you guys can get your hands on a pastured pig's head, that's a great thing to do. But lard back in the day was something everybody used. They ate it every day. They ate bacon every day, or not every day. They didn't eat bacon every day, but they ate lard every day. And it's a great source of vitamin D, especially pastured pigs that are outside. Well, it's really hard to get lard these days for most people. The lard that you buy in the store, you don't want to buy that stuff. It's oxidized because it's homogenized. It's also from pigs that are eating super high levels of pesticides. So really you want to get lard from a pig fat from a farmer who's got pastured pigs that are organic, and you want to render it yourself. It's really easy. But how many of us are actually doing that? Not that many. Okay, so that's one option. That's one really good way that traditionally we used to get a lot of vitamin D. Vitamin A, we used to eat liver once a week in America. That was the tradition. Now there's lots of other cultures and traditions out there who do different things, but that was just something we always did in America. That's why, once a week, your great grandmother served liver. There's a reason for it, for the vitamin A. So you get your lard, you get your liver, your vitamin A. You're also eating a lot more butter, a lot more egg yolks in the 1800s. You're eating a lot more cream. There's a reason why they say put cream in your coffee. I never figured this out until recently. I was like, oh, everybody puts milk in their coffee now, or half and half, but it was originally cream is all I knew. Susan's talking about looking for a pig's head. So yeah, my daughter wanted me to put up crime scene tape when I was cooking that pig's head. She was not happy about it. All right, so we're eating a lot more butter. If you go back and look at a cookbook from the 1800s, you'll be amazed, because people back then, everything was just swimming in butter and lard and cream. So that was in the 1800s, right? Or even the early 1900s. But even the people Dr. Price studied, they were eating lots more, because they weren't eating all the other stuff that we eat, right? They weren't eating pizza and chicken nuggets and all this stuff. They were eating more of these traditionally healthy foods. So it's just really hard to get the kind of nutrients that we used to get. Furthermore, back in the 1800s, we were all farming. We were outside a lot more in the sun, which we're not now. Most of us don't have the luxury to spend time in the middle of the day to get out and sunbathe. It'd be great if we did, but you know, unfortunately we're in school or we're at work and it's hard to do that. And there's only a certain time during the day when you can get the best sunlight exposure. You do need to be, like I'm actually wearing too many clothes. I have shorts on. You need to be exposing your midriff. And if you live in a northern climate, if you don't live in LA or Florida or one of these places, you're just not going to be getting the same amount. It's going to take you longer to get the vitamin D. So while I do recommend getting as much sun as you can, and by the way, no sunscreen, none, because sunscreen blocks 95% of the vitamin D, according to studies. So, you know, I recommend we all get as much sun as we can during the summer months, spring and summer. But if you know, you're not going to probably get as much as you need. Likewise, you're not going to be eating as much lard and liver and egg yolks as you need. I mean, yeah, you can get some, but you're not going to get 10 times what people were eating in the 30s. It's really hard, you know, unless you're just eating that all day long every day. So that's why I say cod liver oil is the best way to get these nutrients, and especially for children, babies and growing children, especially for the elderly, especially for people who are sick, and every single child who's on the autistic spectrum should be taking this supplement, cod liver oil. I believe that. And go Google Mary Megson, M-E-G-S-O-N, and you can read her studies that she's done with these autistic children. Okay, so vitamins A and D. Now, the other really important reason to take cod liver oil is essential fatty acids. They call them omega-3 fatty acids. They call them essential fatty acids because they're essential for our health, for our cellular health. Like almost everything that we do, we need omega-3s. And unfortunately, our body doesn't make it, so that's why they call it essential. Fish, seafood, is one of the best ways to get it, but how many of us are eating seafood every day? As I said before, you know, I live in LA and we have poke bowls and sushi all over, and it's a lot easier to get seafood here, but for a lot of people, especially in the Midwest, it's not so easy, and a lot of people aren't comfortable cooking seafood, I've noticed. It's just not something they grew up doing. Heck, a lot of us don't even cook at all, right? Or you know, we haven't learned. So learning how to cook seafood is a whole nother ball of wax. If anything, we might know how to make salmon, but it's like there's just not a lot of seafood we know how to prepare, and then you don't have the variety, and then you're just not going to be doing it as much as you should. They say you should be eating seafood at least 2 or 3 times a week, but to get the amount of omega-3s that you need, it's going to be probably more than that. So the issue comes down to this. It's omega-6s versus omega-3s. You might have heard about this. There's a ratio. And for healthy human populations, we're supposed to have a ratio of more like 4 to 1, omega-6s to omega-3s. Well, something changed in the 1900s, and that is something called confinement agriculture. And what happened is all the animals moved inside and into confined spaces, and they started feeding them. They're not all inside. I mean, they could be feedlots, but they're in confinement, okay, as opposed to being out on pasture like cows used to be. Instead of letting them graze on grass, they are now almost all being fed corn and soy and other grains. Now, what's wrong with that? It's not a traditional diet for animals, for grazing animals, and it has very high omega-6. And so that you're not getting the omega-3s that you used to get from grass-fed animals. So even if you are eating copious amounts of cream and butter and cheese and egg yolks, you're not going to get the omega-3s. that you used to when animals were on pasture. Now you might be going out of your way and getting all grass-fed dairy and meat and eggs, and if you are, that's awesome. You're not going to get it when you're out at the restaurants most of the time, and you know, do the best you can. 80-20 rule, that's what I try to do. But wow, I'm really starting to sweat now. This is good. Sweating's good. Detoxifying. So, you know, it's not just about, you know, you don't have to be perfect, but it really is about this ratio. You want to try to have that ratio 4-to-1. Well, the ratio now is like at least 20-to-1, just because we're getting so many omega-6s. And it's not just from the meat and dairy, it's also from all the oils that are in the foods now. People cook with safflower oil and sunflower oil and all these crazy newfangled oils that we never really ate in nature. You know, and fats are one of the most important things for our brains, for, you know, our health. So that's why another reason not to eat the processed foods is just that they've got all those cheap fats, those factory fats that I call them. So anyway, if you're not getting the right ratio of omega-3s, you're not getting enough omega-3s, cod liver oil, once again, is a really good way to get those omega-3s in. Interesting story, the first time, or it's the second time I went to Hawaii, a few years ago, my husband and I were taking a lot of cod liver oil, and we, on that trip to Hawaii, we were only there less than a week, but every day we were eating loads of seafood, like literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They had a Japanese breakfast at the hotel we were at. And it was bizarre because, and we had also been eating grass-fed meats and dairy for at least a couple years before we went. And what's really interesting is that's the second time I went to Hawaii. The first time I went to Hawaii, I burned so badly just within a couple hours. And on this trip to Hawaii, neither one of us burned at all. Like, and we were in a convertible, and we drove all over the island and all day. And then we went snorkeling, and we didn't burn at all, and we didn't use sunscreen. So that is, I have read that omega-3s, when you get enough omega-3s, you don't burn. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Like, why would the human body be designed? We are such amazing creatures. Why would our human body be designed that we would burn from the sun? We shouldn't. But we're getting too many omega-6s in our diet, and that's why. Now, here's the other problem. It's like a vicious cycle. When you don't get enough omega-3s, you're getting too many omega-6s, you can't spend time in the sun to build up that vitamin D that you need, desperately need. And so you're using sunscreen, blocking 95% of the vitamin D. You can see where this goes. So, seafood. If you're going to be eating, now, you could get everything you need, I think, if you ate seafood every day. I think you probably could get enough vitamin A and vitamin D and omega-3s. But we're just, you know, most of us don't live in Fiji or Tokyo or even LA. I mean, it's just not, we're just not eating enough. So, cod liver oil is an easy way to get that into our diet, especially for our kids that maybe they're picky, they don't want to eat seafood. I think that it's an excellent insurance policy to make sure that they're getting what they need. There's a lot of research out there on, you probably know, and I don't need to talk about it, the omega-3s in fish oil people say to take for babies, you know, when you're pregnant. So that's omega-3s. All right, those are the 3 reasons to take it. Now, here's the deal with cod liver oil. The Weston Price Foundation is like the one that's really been pushing cod liver oil over the years, and they've been saying that, you know, they have their recommended brands, and that's why I really felt compelled to write this post and get it out there, because there's nobody else really, everybody's parroting back what Weston Price Foundation says that we need to take the brands that they recommend, but they failed us on that because the brands that they've recommended now are wrong. They're just wrong. And in my last post, I talked about why. The ratio. It's not just that the fermented cod liver oil that they recommend is rancid. It's also that the ratio of vitamins A and D are way too high. And that's based on their own tests that they did. Last fall, 2015, they did a test showing that the fermented cod liver oil was like 50-to-1 ratio. Sorry, gotta cross the street here. It's a noisy street. Now this is problematic, as I said, because most of us aren't getting enough vitamin D, and it's hard to get food sources of vitamin D, and we're not getting enough sun like we used to. So if you're taking a supplement with high levels of vitamin A and it doesn't have very much vitamin D, what's going to happen is you can build up vitamin A toxicity, and that is not good. It's toxic. So for safety reasons and for health reasons, we need to make sure that cod liver oil, if we're taking cod liver oil that's high in vitamin A, it needs to also have the right ratio of vitamin D, and it needs to have enough vitamin D. There is only one cod liver oil on the market that has the right ratio of vitamin A to vitamin D, and that is the Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil, which just started being imported a few years ago from Norway. It's the only cod liver oil on the market that is not heated. They extract the oil from the livers using a cold processing. So it's a raw cod liver oil. It's the only raw cod liver oil. Well, they say green pasture cod liver oil, fermented cod liver oil is raw, but I believe it's rancid. So I don't count that as something I would recommend. Furthermore, the green pasture cod liver oil is very low in vitamin D. They found 59 IU vitamin D in a teaspoon, and that's a ratio of 53-to-1, which is much too high in vitamin A, much too high. Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil has a ratio of about 10-to-1, which is just right on the money. There's a range when they list their nutrients. Their most recent nutrient testing, there's a range, and it ranges from 14-to-1 to 7-to-1. So if you take the average in between that, it's about 10-to-1. Now you should see a range when you do vitamin testing with cod liver oil. If you have exact numbers like 800 to 80 or something, that would be synthetic vitamins that they're adding. Okay, I should talk a little bit about I was going to talk about raw milk and pasteurized milk, and why it's so different, and then that'll help you understand why the synthetic vitamins are no good, and why you don't want to take them. You really don't want to take them. You're better off eating food than taking synthetic vitamins. So let me introduce this part with my spiel about milk, and because it'll help you understand. Very few people understand this stuff about the milk because, everybody just drinks milk. We're like, well, it's just milk. But it's not the milk that our ancestors drank. It's not the milk that our great-grandmothers drank. When I've talked to anybody with perfect teeth who came from Guatemala or Russia or, these places where they ate a traditional diet, they grew up in a village, they have perfect teeth, no cavities, perfectly white, straight teeth, never had braces, don't need glasses. I mean, these people are in perfect health. And when I ask them what kind of milk did you drink, they always say fresh from the cow. It was not heated, it was not pasteurized, it was not homogenized, okay? It's raw milk from the cow, and that's the way it's meant to be drunk. I always say if God meant for us to drink skim milk, then he would have made it that way. It doesn't come out of the cows like that. The reason they make skim milk, by the way, and 2% and all these 1%, whatever all these things are that they do with the milk, it's a way for them to sell more. It's a way for them to make more money, because they make more money. They take the milk fat from the milk and they turn it into ice cream and sour cream, and those are their high profit margin things that they sell. This is so they don't have to sell the cream separately, you know, and then whole milk. If they can convince consumers that skim milk is better for them, they make more money. See how that works? It's very crafty. But my thing on skim milk, so let me talk about the 4 types of milk, and this will help you guys understand the difference between cod liver oil brands. So there's whole milk from grass-fed cows eating grass that's not pasteurized and not homogenized, straight from the cow. That's the best possible thing you could eat. That's what real milk is. And it is just one of the best foods out there. And there are cultures like the Swiss. There are cultures like the Swiss who ate cheese and butter and cream and milk, and they lived on that. They ate liver once a week. They lived mostly on that, and they were incredibly healthy, okay? The Africans, too, lived on mostly dairy with some blood. So, because they didn't eat the liver. So there are diets out there that you can really live on this stuff, but it's not the same thing as this modern milk that's made. So, if you can't get raw milk from grass-fed cows, the next best choice is not raw milk, but lightly pasteurized and not homogenized, and it still has to be from grass-fed cows. The reason grass-fed is so important, I talked about the omega-3s, and it's higher in other vitamins as well. So it's what cows are supposed to be eating. They live a lot longer eating pasture, eating grass. So there's many reasons, but the omega-3 is a big one. There's also a CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. There's a bunch of reasons. But I won't get into all that because this is not about milk, but it's just to show you the difference. Number 2 is lightly pasteurized but not homogenized. Now the issue with homogenization is that if the fat is still in the milk and it's homogenized, the way they homogenize milk is they put it through high pressure to make the fat globules smaller so that they won't rise. The cream rises to the top, right? That's the expression, that's where that comes from. This was just to make it, I don't know, uniform so that the cream doesn't rise to the top. And so with that, the milk is, you don't need to shake it when you take it out like with raw milk, but it oxidizes the fat. It damages the fat. It makes it rancid when you homogenize. So we don't want homogenization. Lightly pasteurized isn't the worst thing. It's like the same reason why it doesn't hurt you if you cook your milk. If you know, use your milk in cooking, it's okay. But you don't want ultra pasteurized, the UHT milk. That's the kind of milk they literally don't need to refrigerate it. They can put it on the shelf for 2 or 3 months. Isn't that nasty? That's just nasty. Now they put it in the refrigerated section because they don't want us to know how nasty it is. But I remember seeing this once at a market. I was like, the shelf life on this brand of milk is like 2 months. And I was like, what is the deal? That's why. Because it's basically dead. There's nothing in it. So ultra pasteurized is bad. And a lot of the organic milks are ultra pasteurized. So you really have to watch for that. All right. So those are the 2 brands of milk that are recommended. The first one is the raw milk from grass-fed cows. The second one is pasteurized milk from grass-fed cows that's not homogenized. Now that's hard to find too. You can find, there's some brands of cream top milk that you can find. Now here's the other issue that I read about. Most milks, they can add synthetic vitamins. They do add synthetic vitamins to the skim milks and the 2% milk. Because when they go through all this processing, it destroys the vitamins. So, it's a noisy truck. So that is why they do, and they don't have to put it on the label. So you don't know when you're getting these synthetic vitamins. And there's a lot of evidence out there that synthetic vitamins are bad for you, that your body sees them as an invader, that you don't see them as a nutrient. So that's another reason you have to be so careful about the milks that you buy. Okay, there's two more kinds of milk. The third one, best choice, is pasteurized, homogenized whole milk from grain-fed cows that are not, that is organic. We're still talking about organic. Everything so far has been organic. Grain-fed cows. So these are the cows eating corn and soy, but they're not eating grass, or they are some of the time, but they're also eating corn and soy. They won't say on the label how much they give them and all that. This is their third choice. Again, it's not, they're not eating grass, so they're not going to have the omega-3s that the others do. And they're, it's pasteurized and homogenized. So, like I said, it's going to be rancid. So that's why I don't recommend it. I don't recommend milk that's homogenized. And again, for the omega-3 reason, I really don't recommend the grain-fed. So that's number 3. Number 4 is the worst kind of milk, also not recommended, and that is milk that's grain-fed skim milk, or 2%. Not recommended. What's the point? You know, why do you drink milk other than to make your coffee taste better? But if you're actually trying to get nutrition from it, why spend money, especially on organic milk, if it's essentially just white water? You might as well just drink water. Or coconut milk would be a much better option. Almond milk, and I know I'm going off topic here, but I'll just say it. Almond milk and rice milk and all those other fake milks. I don't know. I'm not waiting for the bus. Almond milk and rice milk, was I saying, those are no good because they actually add synthetic vitamins to all of those milks. Now, especially with those milks, they add D2. They know D2 is harmful for humans, but they're doing it to sell milk. They're doing it because vegans want it, because vegans want a plant-based version of vitamin D, and they have to add vitamin D to these milk because of the processing and because they don't have vitamin D. Milk really doesn't have a lot of vitamin D, by the way. That's not why you drink milk. But for whatever reason, they're trying to make it seem healthier, so they want to add vitamin D to it. Anyhow, that's the story with milk. So there's 4 types of milk. There's only the 2 that I recommend. And being cheese slave, you'd think I would recommend milk to everybody. Not everybody. Not everybody likes milk. But, I mean, it's such a healthy food, but it's not. It really depends on how it's processed and how it's manufactured, how the cows eat, what they eat, if they're getting antibiotics, if they're eating pesticides, etc., right? If you are, if you don't have access to raw milk or lightly pasteurized, not homogenized, grass-fed milk, I would say don't buy milk. I would say drink coconut milk in your coffee, or do bulletproof coffee with butter. That is what you should do. All right. So same thing with cod liver oil. Now there's other people saying, pretty much everybody out there is saying that if you can't afford Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil, then you could go with Nordic Naturals, or you could go with some of these others that they recommend. No. Why? It's like eating white bread. It's like drinking skim milk. There's no reason to waste your money. I would much rather see you guys go out and buy salmon and feed your family salmon and shrimp and anchovies and all these other foods, that tuna, make tuna fish. Feed your family fish every day if you're not going to buy cod liver oil that's extra virgin cod liver oil. I mean, if you want to get the omega-3s, you could go out and buy a fish oil But, and I haven't calculated, I haven't crunched the numbers on this yet, but the fish oils are expensive too, the decent ones, and the ones that are not decent are crap. Just crap. Because you don't know what they're using. And you don't know how they're processing it. There's a lot of fraud in the seafood industry. So, you know, I can write a longer post on that later, but omega-3s, yes, you can get a lot from your you know, grass-fed, if you're doing everything grass-fed, if you have access. You need to look at what you can get, I think, too, as far as like saving money. You need to look at what you have access to. If you have like raw milk dairies near you that are providing, you know, you everything as far as like cheese and butter and milk, leverage that, and then feed your family liver once a week, and try to cook with lard if you can. Like, that would be a great diet. That would be a really great diet. But if you're like most of us and you don't have access to that, you don't live in Amish country, you know, or for us here in California, raw milk's really expensive compared to what I know people get it for in other parts of the country where they have like Amish dairies around and stuff like that. So it really just depends. Now, here's how I look at it as far as cost, because you know, I'm doing a whole series on how to cut your food budget by 50%. I would say that the way I like to do it, and I do this way with, this is the same thing I do with weight loss. I cut the calories that I don't care about, and I save my calories for the things I do care about. The things that I know I'm gonna binge on, things I know that I'm gonna, this is just when I'm losing weight, you know? So the way I look at it with saving money on food, I would much rather buy beans that are dried and I can save half price on those. I would rather make my own bread. I would rather save money on these other things that I can save money on that don't matter as much, and then use the money that I've saved to buy the high quality foods that are really going to nourish my family. And like I said in the beginning of this video, the most important foods are the fat soluble activators and the minerals. We talk about on other videos about getting the fluoride out and getting, you know, the chemicals out, and that's a whole nother issue. But as far as what to get into your family, the fat soluble vitamins, the vitamins A, boy, those FedEx trucks are loud. Vitamins A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2, those are the most important vitamins. Again, lard, butter, grass-fed cream, whole milk from grass-fed cows. These are the foods, egg yolks, especially pastured egg yolks. These are the foods that we need to eat more of. Cheese. If you can get imported cheese, by the way, that is usually pastured, oftentimes, not all. When I went to Amsterdam and asked them about grass-fed cheese, they were like, I go, is this cheese grass-fed? And they were like, what other kind is there? The kind we have in America. So it depends on where you go. And I know that there's more confinement feeding now in Europe than there used to be. You do have to ask, but these are the foods that we really need to feed our families. If you can do more of that, I think it's awesome, and I think it's necessary. But if you're somebody who, like I said in the beginning, if you're sick, if you have children on the spectrum, if you have special needs, I'm taking cod liver oil now as an experiment. I'm finally back on it now that I'm on Rosita, now that I don't do the fermented cod liver oil anymore, and I would not recommend that. I want to see if my eyesight gets better. There is tons of information in Dr. Weston Price's book about vitamin A and how the eyes form. And I do believe in the power of the body to regenerate. That was another thing I was fascinated. I saw all these pictures the other day of studies that were done in India, and they showed, and I think it might have been China too, and they showed people who had eaten a lot of fluoride, and it was from their water. It was natural fluoride in their water. They lived in places where they had high fluoride. I think it was China and India, and they literally, their bodies were like this, hunched over, and they did say that after they got the fluoride out, they straightened up. So I do think the body can regenerate, and these stories of these autistic kids taking cod liver oil, getting vitamin A, are just phenomenal. Like getting words again, getting language. This just tells you how important nutrition is for us. So, yeah, I think that bottom line, if you're not eating loads of seafood like every day, and getting just, if you're not eating a Weston Price diet like these people were eating seal fat and liver and blood and you know, I would say supplementing with cod liver oil is the easiest way to do it. Raw milk is another great food, grass-fed butter, all these things are great. But cod liver oil is such an easy way to do it. Okay, I'm gonna answer some questions and then wrap up. I will share the waffle iron solution below, so thanks for asking about that. Rosita or Nordic Naturals? So Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil is the only cod liver oil I recommend. It is the only one that's raw, that's not heated. The way they remove the impurities is with charcoal, which is the same way that they remove impurities with water filtration. So it works. It's independently tested. There was some story going on last year about Rosita having impurities, heavy metals, and that was because somebody had tested the raw, not purified oil. So that was a false story. Nordic Naturals has the wrong ratio of vitamins A and D, and too much A can be toxic, and it is very hard for most of us to get enough vitamin D, as I talked about in the beginning of the video. If you go back and watch, when it's over, you can watch the whole video. So no, I don't recommend Nordic Naturals. They do have a vitamin D version of their cod liver oil, but it's called Arctic D, but it's synthetic D, so I don't recommend that. I would rather see you guys eating lard or other forms of vitamin D, but it's hard to get enough vitamin D in our diet. And definitely, you just don't want to be taking all this vitamin A if you're not getting enough vitamin D. Plant-based calcium, I don't do cow's milk. It's not for the calcium, it is for the fat-soluble activators. And actually, Dr. Weston Price, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Ayana, I think. You may not be on this anymore, but if you are, Dr. Weston Price talked about it. He studied cultures all over the world, from Peruvian Indians to Eskimos, to people in Africa, Scottish, Swiss. There was not one single plant-based diet he studied that was vibrantly healthy. So there's a reason why our ancestors were not vegans. There aren't any. They don't reproduce. They're not, it's not a traditional way to live. And it's not sustainable environmentally. If you guys go and watch Alan Savory's TED Talk, he shows, and you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. He shows the images in this video of the difference in the soil with animal manure from grazing animals versus not, and they completely reverse drought and desertification. So we need the animals. We need the animals. A plant-based diet is not the answer, and it's not the answer for human health. Okay, let's see what else we have. Not making fish enough, Susan says. Worry about bad fish. You know, Vital Choice online is a really good source to buy if you don't have fish near you, wild caught. Fish is a huge thing. I'm going to write posts about this because there's a lot of fraud, and people will charge you a lot of money saying that it's wild caught, and it's not. Like, I see people buying seafood at Costco. I haven't shopped at Costco in a while, so I don't know if it's changed, but last time I heard, the seafood there, the salmon there, is not wild caught, and the regulations are just not very strict. So it's know your farmer. You got to know where you're getting it. And there's a lot of issues with farm fish, as we know. So again, cod liver oil is a good solution for those of us who don't have access to good quality seafood. Heather says there's a smoked salmon recall. Probably farm fish. Yeah. I'm going to write a whole post about farm fish because that's a huge issue. But even Randy Hartnell, who runs Vital Choice, said that he went out to dinner recently, and I follow him on Facebook, so I see all his posts. And he said he went out to dinner recently, and they try to pass off. They were charging like double for wild-caught salmon, and he's a fisherman. He knows. He runs a whole company, and he was like, "This is not wild-caught." And he said, "Could you go back and check the box?" And they went and checked the box, and it was farmed, and they were selling it as wild. So, and this was McCormick and Schmidt. This was a decent, this was a big restaurant chain. So they're doing it everywhere. It's really hard to avoid. Gina says, that's what we get: lightly pasteurized, grass-fed, almost organic, non-homogenized cream on top. Can't get raw for a few reasons. See, that's good. That's the best way to do it if you cannot get raw milk. Or, you can't justify the expense. Although I think anybody can justify the expense if you cut down on your other food costs. The biggest food costs in our budget are the processed things that are bad for us, that, aren't adding any nutritional value. Cut those things. Cut all the chips and crackers and cookies and, like I said, canned beans, all the convenience things. Cut those things, and then you're going to have more room in your budget for the other things. Chicken, buy whole chickens. Don't buy the chicken breasts. Those are ridiculously expensive. Gina says, can eyesight approve? Yes. So it was Archie Welch who told me this, and he's not allowed to officially make health claims because he is working for Organic 3, and they're the ones that import Corganic, that import the Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil. But he said, when I saw him last year at the Bulletproof conference, he told me that he has not needed to wear his readers. As you get old, your eyesight degenerates. Well, it didn't used to. 150, 200 years ago, people didn't. Well, they probably did, but they didn't need to. Not everybody. Like nowadays, it's much more common. And it's more common for kids to need glasses and braces, which they never did back then. Braces are a new invention. We didn't need them before because the jaws were wide enough, because we got all the nutrition that we needed if we weren't living in poverty, right? If we could afford. So, yes, he said he took cod liver oil, the extra virgin cod liver oil, for 6 months and stopped needing his reading glasses. So I'm hoping it helps. If it doesn't, I still know I'm doing something great for my body and it's something that I need, but we'll see what happens. Yes, Gina, you can't grow healthy plants without animal products. A really good book to read is The Vegetarian Myth by Lierre Keith. She also talks about that. A humanless landscape. It's what they call, these modern environmentalists call it, a humanless landscape, and they say, we need to get humans off of the land, and then because it's man-made, it's agriculture that causes the deforestation and the drought, when in fact it's the opposite. It's the animal manure, and any gardener knows this. The best thing you can do for your tomatoes is animal manure. So we need animals. We need to eat animals. I taught my daughter this really early on when she was talking about some of her friends were becoming vegetarians when she was like 7, and I taught her all about the circle of life, so she's not talking about that anymore. Well, Gina, so I can't really say. It's Archie Welch. He's one of the owners of Organic 3, and I can't really publicize that, although I just did, because he is not allowed to make health claims about the product, right, because they're selling the product. And I'm not making that health claim either. I mean, I don't know if it's going to work. But we do know, if you go back, actually the best source for you to read is go back and read Dr. Weston Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and he's got multiple, if you get that book and start reading about vitamin A, multiple times in that book he talks about vitamin A and the eyes. And he talks about animals that didn't get enough vitamin A, calves, cows, and different animals, pigs. Some of them were born without eyes. Some of them were born with really bad eyesight. So, and there's tons of information online about vitamin A and eyesight. And so we all need vitamin A, but the thing is, you want to take vitamin A with enough vitamin D. So that's why I will not recommend any cod liver oil out there with high vitamin A and low vitamin D. And there isn't any. There's only one, and that's Rosita. At some point, I might recommend a fish oil that I've been trying to find, a fish oil that would have the omega-3s if people don't want to take cod liver oil. I haven't been able to find one that I like, so I'll look into that. But right now, really the only thing I can recommend is Rosita extra virgin cod liver oil, and then everybody needs to go out and buy pig heads. Just kidding. All your kids are gonna blame me when you guys go out and start trying to scout for pigs' heads. Seriously though, so cheap, you get so much good nutrition out of it. Anyway, that's all I got for today, you guys. Thank you for joining me, and I'll have my post up soon. Ask your questions below if you watch this later and you have questions.